shuzen bogyo jia jogo kore shobutsu no kyo. Refrain from all harmful acts. Practice all that is good. Purify your heart. This is the everlasting teaching of all the Buddhas. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
56th anniversary service. We offered, what did we offer? Anyone listen to the dedication? What? So tea, there was tea. What else? Incense. What else? Chanting. One thing is missing. There is no rice. Anyone see rice here? Light. See the oil lamp. And the sutra candle, which always burns when we are chanting sutras. That is the offering of the light. Light, incense, tea, and the chanting of Daihi en Mombukai Jinshu. The Namu Kadatanno, the Dharani of the great compassionate one. It's a fairly simple service, fairly simple service. So what happens? As the doshi is the person who fulfills a function, and the function that the doshi fulfills is the function of leading the service, of coming in, bowing, then approaching the Butsudan, the altar, and picking up the tea and purifying it over the incense, the smoke that comes from the incense bowl, where there's a round piece of glowing charcoal. It's always interesting to do that. The timing is really off, You take that little piece of wood, you put it on there. And if you really would wait until the smoke comes, everybody would be thinking, what is he standing there for? Why isn't he moving? So you start purifying, where's the smoke? Where's the smoke? Maybe the smoke is not necessary for the purification at all. And then raising up the purified offering above the level of the eyes of the person offering is that stepping out of this person doing something into offering this to the whole universe, putting it down. Then on the way back we hear the boom, the big bell. And then we all start chanting. And we were standing up to honor the ancestors who were honored also in the dedication, who are responsible for our being here by having founded this temple, by having taught the teachers who became our teachers or our teachers' teachers. And so many, many generations back to Shakyamuni Buddha, who we call Shakyamuni Buddha. And sometimes we call him Gautama Buddha or Gautama Buddha. And what is the most important, the really, really essential thing we have to know about this Buddha?
That he awakened.
Yeah, he awakened. That's why we call him the Buddha. But even more important,
He left us the instructions how to follow in his steps.
that's quite important too, right?
He was ordinary.
He was ordinary.
He was a prince.
Yeah, he was an ordinary prince. But we're getting closer.
He was human.
He was human. Siddhartha. Siddhartha. Even though the Buddhist lore or the stories that developed say that he was born from his mother's armpit, we have a physician here. Is it likely that any child is born from their mother's armpit?
Buddhas can do everything.
Buddha! Is that your medical opinion?
No, it means that he was born without pain and without complications.
Without pain and without complications. Yeah, I don't know how that equates to an armpit because they happen to be rather stinky, especially after Seshhin in a warm room, you know? So, but he was Siddhartha God. Siddhartha. Siddhartha. The first one who we know in this practice and who we give a name to and who showed us how to walk this path. And it's interesting to look at that, you know, because sometimes we sit here and we name these eminent masters and all the generations before us, and it seems all so clean. There is a term that's called hagiography. Have you heard that term? You know? No? It's making the past look just splendid. Nothing bad ever happened, you know? Some people would like that to be true and believe in it, and that's fine if they can. But the important thing is to know that all of this, where we are here, everything we do, everything we think is all based on human beings. So this Siddhartha, strike one, he was a prince, right? But then, he left the palace, and after he left the palace, he saw, oh my God, not everybody is living like I do. And maybe being a prince at that time was many rungs below our standard of living. I am sure the palace didn't have air conditioning, running hot and cold water, organic food, hemorrhoid-friendly toilet paper. All of that did not exist. But he was a prince, so he was somewhat better off than the broad populace. So he saw, oh, people are getting sick. People are suffering. They're getting old. And finally, there was a corpse. But there was a fourth thing that he saw in his adventure out in the world of outside the palace. What did he see? One more thing he saw.
A sannyasi.
a sannyasin, a person practicing the spiritual way, a man or woman or any other identity, fits fine. A sannyasin. So one more inspiration. And he decided, okay, this is what I will do. So he had the brilliant idea to leave his wife and his kid behind. Strike two, right? This is like, don't be a spiritual deadbeat, father or mother. But he was drawn so intensely that I don't know if he asked his wife or not, honey, I want to go and become a homeless person that eats maybe 1 grain of rice and all of that. And is that okay with you? Well, he left anyway. We know the history later recounts that even later his wife became a bhikkhuni, and his son followed the teaching as well. But it is still very important to note that this is a quite human thing to do. I gotta get out of here. I have to learn this. Yeah. So then he did all his many years of practicing this and practicing that, and finally ending up realizing that, well, whatever I did so far, very helpful, but it has not extinguished that feeling of dukkha, that feeling of being not complete. This longing for completeness is such a thing that is true for all human beings, for all cultures, and for all times. It takes all different forms. Kaliba! Taking human beings and offering them to the gods in pieces, and all for the sake of feeling more complete. No room for hagiography, religious wars. Oh yeah, Buddhists, they are all peaceful. Well, go to Myanmar and see what happens there. There are now, and this is the important point, there are some human beings who call themselves Buddhists that don't like other human beings who are Muslim and persecute them. What is he doing here? Is he trying to persuade us that none of this is any good? No, not at all. It is just we have to be really aware that the state of a human being inherently is incomplete. Incompletion is not always a thing that we can decry and say, it's just bad. Let's find out why. Why are we incomplete? Because we are separate. If we were complete, we wouldn't have to eat. We wouldn't have to breathe or anything. The idea of the perpetuum mobile, the thing that retains itself forever without needing any other energy, is not existing. It doesn't exist in this realm of separation. Separation is the breaking up of the wholeness into what we in Buddhism call the 10,000 things. It's just a number, infinite number of things that are recognizable because there is the distance that we experience as human beings between subject and object. A seer sees, a hearer hears. Yet at the same time, in this practice, we develop the ability to see without a seer, to hear without a hearer, thoughts without a thinker. All of that is possible, and already that is a more complete state, where there is no discrimination, where this distance between subject and objects just disappears. Feel in your heart the person that is the closest to you right now. And how you can embrace them and disappear in that embrace. And return back into the Zen. Oh, here I am. That is completion. But most of the time, our consciousness exists in this realm of separation. Now, I've been very careful to not call that realm of separation the realm of duality. When does duality arise? There's often this mistaken belief that as soon as things are separate, duality exists. Duality only comes into existence the moment our consciousness starts attaching this, that. Before that, it is, even though it is this full spectrum of manifestations, it is the manifestation of that indivisibility. It is not divisible. Just when we enter the realm of about, everything is truly dualistic, cut into pieces. Coming back to our history, not to belabor it, but even with his failings as a human being, as what maybe society was telling Siddhartha, I think it was not cool then to leave your wife and your child. Overall, his struggle, his determination to get to the bottom of this brought something forth that we all benefit from. And we may now say, well, oh yeah, wonderful teachings, sutras, dharanis, shastras, and this type of Buddhism and that type of Buddhism. Certainly, a wonderful collection of human ingenuity and of spiritual development. From the point of view of this Zen practitioner sitting here, though the most striking and the most encouraging facet of it for me always was that this was a regular person, a human being, and what he showed in his life is a way to walk this human life while fully being subject to that fallibility in terms of making decisions that at times certainly initially were harmful, but taking from there this aspiration to see it through to the very end, where then a completely different way of relationship with the world comes into existence. Now we have a good number of folks here. A lot of you have taken Jukai and received a name. And there's a good number of people here who are in the current Jukai group and will have that Jukai ceremony at the end of harvest session. We're looking there at the basic teachings of Buddhism, and of course there's a sitting involved and chanting and all of that, and we practice. And one of the parts we have gone over already, but which I want just to return to today for the sake of everybody and for the anniversaries as well, is to look at these fundamental precepts. The fundamental precepts that I chanted just before, that are translated into English as refrain from all harmful acts. Practice all that is good. Purify your heart. This is the everlasting teaching of all the Buddhas. How do we approach such words? Remember, these are words. These are words that came out of the very hard labor of spiritual practice, of Shakyamuni, of all the ancestors, the human beings who went through this. And here's something, some facet of this that you might find quite interesting. When you look at the characters, there is no indication, because the language it was written in, these Chinese characters, there are no exclamation points. There's nothing to indicate here what kind of voice it actually is. And if you go back to the Pali and to the Sanskrit, you will find out that these fundamental precepts are actually not stated as an imperative. There is no prohibition actually stated. So another way to translate this, and this is written about in the Zengaku Daijiten, which is the great encyclopedia of Zen in the Japanese language. We could translate it like Sogen Hori actually translated it like this. No harmful acts are committed. All good is done. The purity of one's own mind is the everlasting teaching of all Buddhas. Now this sets up a completely different relationship. Before, it sounds like you will refrain from all harmful acts, and if you practice all that is good, and if you purify your heart, you will get to the core of these everlasting teachings of the Buddha. Stating it like that is, as we could say, as Oan Odonge would have said yesterday, refraining from all harmful acts is misusing your mind. Practicing all that is good is misusing your mind. Shakuyoje. Purifying your heart is misusing the mind. However, no harmful acts are committed. When is that the case? When all self-referential consciousness, attachments, delusions, predilections, fears, hopes have no place to be. Even in this world of the 10,000 things, this vigorous action of complete presence leaves no room for harmful acts to be committed. Do we make mistakes? Oh yeah. So we have to be very careful. So instead of looking at it from the point of view of a prohibition, a limitation, we are called to develop that presence, the presence of heart and mind that is needed to be so present that no harmful acts are committed. And someone came into Doksan this time and presented a verse responding to a koan. And it was a beautiful verse. And I had to had a response springing up in my mind right away. And what the response was. Now please consider that from the point of view of the human condition in which we find ourselves. Broken heart. Heart broken open. This human heart has to break to be open. And here in a community like this, where we dedicate ourselves to developing that firm walk we have, that still treads lightly, we break the heart from the fetters and the chains that holds it. And what holds it is the idea of the other, that dualistic idea. When that breaks, the heart breaks open. No harmful acts are committed. All good is done. And the purity of our own mind is the everlasting teaching of all Buddhas that reveals itself right here, right now. We just have to show up for it. So when you chant, whatever it is you chant, if it is from another tradition or not, with your whole being become sound. Forget about the meaning. It's not about meaning. Meaning is misusing your mind from the point of view of Zen practice. On the other hand, you better know what a red do not walk sign means. So I thank all the ancestors. No matter how flawed their records could be called. Because in order to honor them as human beings and to know that we as human beings have the opportunity to mature and develop to more and more spiritual and compassionate existence. All of that must be recognized in its brokenness, reconciled with our own effort not to break that very way. We all will find our own very, sometimes subtle, individual ways of breaking and of messing up and of leaving traces of defecating where it doesn't belong. I'm sorry, it's built in. But we can clean up. We can serve not others, but the completeness of this indivisible. So